Speaking of sheltering in place, it's time for the AEW review, where normally I drop a lot of bombs on people. But in this case, Brian, the Bizarro World. I just indicated a few minutes ago that NXT drastically let us down. The program that has been the all-time undisputed leader in letting people down with tomfoolery and amateur cosplaying. What the fuck has happened? The whole world has turned upside down. This was one AEW from the Arthur Ashe Stadium on the Wednesday nights, what we're talking about now. Haven't seen the Friday yet, but on the Wednesday night, was this show top to bottom better than any WWE program that we have reviewed in either recent memory, or my memory doesn't go back too far for those shows, but I would have remembered one top to bottom that was as good as this, and I don't. Can you?
There's no question. There has not been a single WWE television show that has compared to this, and quite frankly, I don't think there's been an AEW TV show that's compared to this.
Well, that goes without saying. I mean, we've had segments.
Yeah, the Punk one was special for that moment, but then it was the rest of the show. This was, and by and large, they kept a lot of the bullshit off this show. This was, I think, their best television show ever.
Well, and that's why, because they kept the bullshit off the show. Imagine that. If only somebody had mentioned 2 years ago, maybe keep the bullshit off the show. But anyway, they had, again, all the elements of a major big-time production here. They had the big building that looked fantastic. They had the big crowd, 20,177 of them. Son of a gun, wouldn't you know who won the pony? You open up with the voice of Jim Ross, and the crowd pans, and everybody's fired up and there's signs. This looks like something. Then I went into this as soon as I saw it was going to be the first match. I said, all right, Bryan Danielson and good old Twinkle Toes. Twinkle Toes McFingerbang, Harpo McFingerfuck, whatever name I've given him. Let's see, can Bryan Danielson do the unthinkable and make this clown have a real wrestling match with none of the bullshit that he usually does? That was my question, and I sat down to watch this. I've tried to in the past put out of my mind Twinkle Toes' checkered past in the wrestling business. And I again tried to. I wasn't going to make notes on this as it happened. I was going to watch it as a presentation, see what kind of a magician Bryan Danielson is, and try to put out of my mind that Twinkle Toes is famous for wrestling sex toys and kids and other guys in thongs. To the object of the match is to stick your finger up the other guy's ass, or dressed as Barbara Eden from I Dream of Jeannie, etc. And I'm still amazed, I must point out at the beginning, that this guy can get booked at all, which shows the complete collapse of the wrestling business over the last 10 to 15 years, where anybody, regardless of what they've done to expose or embarrass the wrestling business, can still participate. Having said all of that, it's the best match Twinkle Toes ever had in his life. And all he had to do was not do the fake, phony, silly shit. Danielson comes out, he's in great shape. He looks fucking tremendous. He's not the biggest guy, but he's got a physique to match his frame. The fans were ballistic for him. And Bryan Danielson would never again get this spot or this ovation if he was in the WWE. It's a new environment with fans that have been waiting to see him leave the evil empire, get unleashed where he can do what he wants to do and what he can do. And even against old Twinkle Toes, which even though, he's been a heel for however long, he doesn't, Omega does not have real heel heat because the people fucking like him because he does fancy stuff and that they enjoy. But here, they were actually for Bryan Danielson because, God, even these fans, and especially the New Yorkers, They know, okay, Danielson's a big-time talent and a major deal, and we like him and we're going to cheer for him, so they were able to boo Olivier. But, I mean, it's not a secret who led this, because why was it different than all of Olivier's other matches? Because this was a Bryan Danielson match, and he had a guy that is athletic and is a good athlete and can perform these moves to do it with him. So they started slow. They didn't run off and leave the fans like normal. Danielson was in control for a while, dictated the pace. Danielson is a great baby face, from the facials to his body language to the way that he just draws people into what he's doing. And they didn't take their first break until 20 minutes into the show, so it had time. You got involved in it. It wasn't like, okay, we've seen 4 minutes of this dream match, now we're going to a commercial break for just as long. You were into it by that point, so you wanted to stay through the break. And everything had made sense. They didn't bury the referee. At one point, they fought out on the ramp, and they stayed out there a bit long, but okay, because they were still moving, and it's all right. It wasn't egregious and obvious like all the other matches where they do that stuff. Coming back from the break, even, at this point, even Twinkle Toes' goofy facials worked there, because Danielson was making Twinkle Toes work like a heel. And he almost killed him at one point with that, or I should say too many pronouns, pal. Twinkle Toes almost killed Danielson. Did you see the buckle bomb into the buckles that became a backwards throw over the top rope because he was off and wasn't looking, which is the problem with that move. You can't see where you're throwing the guy. And that was a close one, because Bryan grabbed the top rope just in a nick of time. But here's a question for you. Bryan, both the Hardley Boys and Twinkle Toes use the knee lift and they both call them a something trigger. With Twinkle Toes, it's the V trigger. With the Bucks, it's the BTE trigger. Why are they using each other's move, and why do all of them look like shit? You can't take a bump off of them. And I don't know, where did they get this from? I've never seen anybody do knee lifts like this, and they always look like shit.
I think it comes from MMA originally, if I had to guess. I don't think they all look like shit. I think Omega's knees, there are a lot of them that I think look really good. And I think the difference is, obviously, the V trigger is one person. The BTE trigger is a group effort.
Well, sometimes they make contact and sometimes they don't, but you can't take a fucking bump. You're already on your knees in most cases, except when he runs and does the little skip and prance and Canterbury knee and whatever. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to be too critical of him here, because it was at least for once a good match. But that's the thing. The finger pointing and the skipping and the prancing was minimized. And the awkward extra movement that he has and the gesticulating that comes from him being self-trained. And normally it looks like you've gotten either a gymnast or a ballet dancer and you're trying to get him to do wrestling moves. But this was all minimized here because of the way that they did it. And he's a good athlete, so he can do the moves, and he can be led, and he can be made better by a guy with Danielson's talent. It's just they haven't been doing it. They haven't had a guy with Danielson's talent. And this style match plays to Twinkle Toes' strengths because it's modern style with moves. He's rotten in a fight because he can't punch and kick, and you don't believe he's mad. And he can't have a Walter and Elia style match because he can't really wrestle as a shoot. And you don't get the idea of a badass tough guy in any respect from him. But this kind of match where it's the more modern style match and they do the moves, but they don't really either actually get evil and fight with each other. This is believable with him. And, the crowd's going ape shit. They're hitting each other with everything. And he got him all the way through the match without doing anything really particularly stupid. And like I said, it was the best match I've ever seen Twinkle Toes in. Danielson's tremendous. The only problem I had here is the same problem that I have with the modern time limit draw. I don't know if they announced to the building that it was a one fall 30-minute time limit match. JR did at the top of when the bell rang. He said it's one fall 30-minute time limit. Paul Turner, the referee, he didn't beat it to death, but he just put the specifics in. But then they were, like I said, they were hitting each other with everything. The crowd's going ape shit. The announcers suddenly say, well, there's 45 seconds left. I didn't hear a call in the arena.
I
Maybe
think there was. No,
you
know what? I was hypersensitive to the audio because I was so in fear of the Good Brothers or someone coming down and ruining this because I was loving the match. And it was a few points towards the end where I heard something in the room. It wasn't clear at home, but I heard something, and I said, oh, no, there it is. And then it went away, and I thought at first, oh, someone must have pressed the wrong thing and made a mistake. And I realized they must have been saying something in the room, because the second time I caught it, I think it was Justin Roberts.
Okay, then that should have been piped through or called attention to in some more prominent fashion, because the point is, for the people in the building, they're trading kicks and chops, and the bell rings, and the fans start booing. Even if they're going to boo a draw anyway because they want to see more of the match, but it looked like it came out of nowhere. And I remember in, 2009, I guess it was, when I first went back to Ring of Honor, and I'm watching one of their house shows, and boom, 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 and the people are into the match, can't even remember who it was, and suddenly the bell rang. And what happened? Oh, time limit draw. There were no time calls. Well, we don't do that. Why don't you do that? Well, if we did that, people would know it's a draw. What? Apparently, in all of wrestling, when I, was peaceably in Louisville and not paying attention to what the rest of the world was doing because I didn't care, they stopped. I know the WWE stopped even giving time limits in matches, but a lot of the other companies stopped doing time calls in the building. Every match, everywhere, house shows, TV, whatever, used to have a 5-minute call every 5 minutes. It's a 20-minute time limit, 5 minutes gone, 15 minutes remaining, 10 minutes gone, 10 minutes remaining. Everybody knew where the time was. That way, when you had a Broadway, a draw, time limit draw is called a Broadway. You go 3 minutes remaining, 2 minutes remaining, 1 minute, 30 seconds. It builds the tension. And then the time runs out. And everybody's on the same page as, oh. But instead, they said, well, the fans are smart. So when we call 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, they're going to know it's a draw. So we're just going to, out of nowhere, without calling any times, ring the bell at a good spot and expect the people not to be pissed off. So we put an end to that in Ring of Honor. And there were time calls, and there were goddamn, basically if we did a time limit draw, everybody knew what was coming in terms of where they were in the time of the match, not the finish, because the whole object and the reason why that this was not changed for 100 years is because you educate your fans. You have as many matches go down to the 3-minute or 2-minute call and then end as you do have Broadways, and then they can't tell. So if they're going to do draws, which that was, by the way, the finish to do here, I thought maybe they'd have Danielson beat him in a non-title match, but that depends. If they did that, they'd have to come right back with a title match in the fairly near future, and I bet they're probably not going to do that. So this way, they gave him Olivier's greatest match. Danielson showed what he could do on national TV. They tore the house down in the big building and made the big crowd happy, and they left it open for the future. So the draw was fine. But if they're going to start doing time limit draws, they've got to fucking educate the people And they need to start doing that by doing time calls in every match they have. And that way, you can never tell the difference. But anyway, overall, as I said, Danielson was great. Old Harpo hung with him. They eliminated all the stupid shit. They didn't overbook it. They didn't bury the referee. The match made sense, and everybody loved it. And then there had to be a little bit of an afterbirth, but even that was kept short because here comes the Hardy Boys, and they tried to attack Danielson, but here comes Christian Cage and Jungle Boy and Dino Douche, and they have a bit of a sloppy fight, and the heels leave. But it didn't harm what they had done, which usually anytime you see the Hardy Boys show up, there's going to be all kinds of shenanigans, but it was quick, and it didn't hurt anything. So Danielson paid for himself in that one segment, to me, because it not only gave their biggest crowd ever and their best TV show ever, the best 30 minutes of the show ever, but also it showed that, yeah, the other dipshit can do it if he's got somebody to do it with that can lead him and not let him engage in his worst instincts. So, bravo, bravo. What'd I miss?
I don't know what you missed. I thought it was an excellent match. Started off a little slow. I thought too slow, but then by the end of it, I didn't care about that. The atmosphere was special. It was, Hogan Rock. It was that CM Punk debut.
Well, and wait a minute, then why maybe a little too slow? The people were cheering and chanting before they touched each other. Why should they have rushed that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm talking about once the match got going.
Yeah.
But again, that's just me, and I could see it either way. But, it's one of those special nights with the crowd. I thought Omega was great. I know you're not going to give him credit for anything, no matter fucking...
I just did! I said it's the best match he ever had.
He can cure cancer, and you give credit to the patient. It's... but I think... Because you're giving Bryan Danielson all the credit, and I think
that's because he does... Why has Twinkle Toes never done this with anybody else?
He's had good matches, and you haven't either... There are matches you haven't watched, and there's matches you haven't watched fairly. At times. Him and Pac was great. Him and Okada, those were excellent matches.
Okada didn't wrestle him on AEW television. I'm talking about this right here.
I thought the 30-minute Iron Man with Pac was great.
He's lucky that I will dignify his fucking wretched presence by watching him after he had a match in front of people with sex toys. So fuck him and feed him fish heads, but I gave him compliments. He's athletic. He can do as he's told. And if he'd have started out in a proper training program, by now he'd probably actually be a really good worker instead of a fucking prissy, prancing asshole.
And my biggest fear was this would degenerate into, like I said, the Good Brothers or something. And it didn't. And thank God it didn't. And, the booing for the 30-minute draw, that was going to happen no matter what. If we're going to do a draw, people are going to boo, but then they're going to get over it quickly because they're going to think about the next match. Will it be a 60-minute draw? What will be the next match? And the potential is there with these two guys to have a classic series of matches. AEW doesn't do a lot of immediate rematches. It'll be interesting to see what they do here. Adam Page still has to get figured back into this somehow.
Oh, that horse has left the barn, no pun intended. The best thing for Adam Page would be for him to come back and get involved in something with somebody that he can beat in the end and get over on. Because he ain't going to beat Harpo for the belt now, not with this fucking high-priced talent that's come in. That would be insane. The time for that, they dicked and diddled around until it passed.
So let me ask you this, all things being equal, it could be any two wrestlers in there. World champion versus high-profile challenger, 30-minute draw. What do you do coming out of this? What do you do next with these two guys?
I try to prolong as long as I can the rematch because Twinkle Toes shouldn't want it, and Danielson and the fans should be pressing on his behalf, and he should try to figure out every way he can to avoid that and put some stumbling blocks in Danielson's path so that they can, when they actually do put the title on the line, they do it on pay-per-view and they'll get another big buy rate. But
now, can I ask you one more question? Not necessarily just about this match, but the first I guess, 35 minutes of this show here. What do you think anyone in Connecticut is thinking watching this? In New York, a stadium they've never run, looks great, that crowd going crazy, and of course it's former Daniel Bryan on the show. What do you think they're thinking seeing that?
I think everybody else in the company has got to be thinking, you know, good Lord, is there some way we can invoke the 25th Amendment on Vince? Because they have to at this point. Look, they got 20,000 people in New York. Even Crockett. When Crockett was neck and neck in the 80s with Vince everywhere, we couldn't get a fucking foothold in New York. Even WCW during the Attitude Era. What did they do in New York or in the New York metropolitan area?
Nassau Coliseum. That was as close you can get to Manhattan, yeah.
And it don't hold 20,000 people. And so, and also, all they needed to do, anybody in the WWE office or anybody in that company, all they needed to do was watch the television show that they perpetrated on Tuesday night and then watch this one and go, holy fuck, we're in trouble. But I'm sure, you know, Vince may be happy, but holy crap.